lake effect of it. A lot of lake effect of it. So.
My wife and I were up visiting up there, and we got into it with the lake effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Itself.
Do we know, do you have a sense of how many are coming out to do some work today? No.
I know that at least one that would typically have been here, right? Tom Rennick usually would have, but Randy and Ian have COVID.
Oh.
So
Oh.
they're doing pretty well, but
Yeah.
Buckets would be here, but they're in Florida.
yeah.
Jay would be here, but she's in Arizona.
Oh, there you go.
Some of the smart people.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, there was somebody else who,
He loves usually come.
yeah, they usually come. Claudia Lois has been here for a month.
Yeah, she didn't go to the last one.
Yeah.
How's Alex Linda?
Better. And she was in this week for 3 days. Still has some issues with healing, but it's
I
better.
understand, and my wife had that same surgery.
Yeah, she's been told she needs to strap everything a little bit tighter because things aren't reattaching quite right yet. Surgery for breast cancer. She was itching to be back active.
Yeah, you want to be active as much as you can.
So she was really bored sitting around at home.
That's what I read, so many books.
I don't know what her dog's name is. Do you know what her dog's name is?
No, Izzy's, one of the dogs died. Lulu died. I think.
Yeah, so it passes as a dog. Well, actually, it's a very well-behaved little dog, so it's not, while it's the ankle biter type of dog, it is not an ankle biter. And often dogs of that size are really allowed to do whatever they want, and so get really bad habits. But her dog doesn't seem to do that. She's very, very calm and so.
I think some of the small ones, there's cats in the dog costume.
Well, they don't behave like cats. They're like cat size, but trying to be a big dog.
Yeah. Or
If you're gonna have a dog, you need one like you two used to have.
yeah, like our lab. Or you still have your brown ones.
She was well behaved and she was big enough to be comfortable.
Yeah, and you take the car seriously. They go, "Whoa." As opposed to.
Well, I think we should probably
Yeah.
get started.
Yeah. So, gather this team with a brief prayer.
Let us pray. Holy and gracious God, we give you thanks for bringing us together in this place. In your name to discover who we are called to be. In the previous sessions, you helped us to find that at our core, we are about love and acceptance, both in what we feel and what we share. Help us now to discern how to use that core, where we go from here, what steps are next, and where you are calling us in this community. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah, so,
Well, let's see what we can advance today. Last time, we had a budget, line items did we have?
We had some general
Right,
categories.
some general categories around budget, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And,
This is my first experience.
I'm sorry.
Introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, sure. I'm Arlen Vernava. Arlen, A-R-L-E-N is the first name. Vernava is the last name. I am, I wear more than one hat. So one of the hats I wear is serving a congregation in Cleveland. It's a United Church of Christ congregation. And I am an intentional interim. That's the hat I wear. An intentional interim is a person who goes into a congregation generally after a clergy has left, so either died or retired or moved on. And then I provide I kind of provide full service 360-degree ministry for them. So I'm their pastor. I do all the things that a pastor does, but I'm also their organizational consultant. I also help them figure out all of the puzzles that they think they have in that community of faith. And whatever they name, we begin to work on together. Yeah, in some way, sure. So, and so I also provide support to congregations who are working on congregational puzzles. And I led a retreat, it's a few years ago now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. About 4 years ago.
About 4 years ago. And that is how Pastor and I met. I was resourcing that retreat, and he was part of that retreat. And then, as you all were beginning to say, we've got some puzzles here that we need to both figure out and put together, he was in touch, and I've been working with you over the last year. Sure. And so are you up to speed as to where we are with this process, or where everybody is? You think?
Generally, where there's some difficulties with specifics and what we discussed, I'm looking at.
Okay. So you'll need to catch up with your brothers and sisters in Christ, so that they can really kind of immerse you more deeply. And yet our work today is actually connected to that immersion, because in all of the work that you all have done over these months, what you have graphed out here is at least a word picture of what feels like core values of this community of faith. And those core values have to do with love and with acceptance. And so that love is both vertical and horizontal, and that acceptance is both vertical and horizontal, if you picture in the sense of that love, and that acceptance is God's love for all of you as community, God's acceptance of all of you as disciples and children of God, and also how it is that you offer that God love to your world, and how you offer acceptance of others in your world. And that's also multidimensional, isn't it? So that's also both all of you who call yourselves this community of faith, right? All of you who say, oh, we're part of this thing because we are members or friends in regular attendance. So that's one dimension. The other dimension is everybody else in your world, whoever that is that you happen to be with and serve. So it's dimensional in that way. And you notice that the words across the top and the bottom, faith in action, those three words, are meant to capture your sense of this is a community that, along with worship, has a deep value around hands-on doing. Right? That faith is something that one does. We don't just think about it, and it's not just a feeling, although it is a feeling, and it is, of course, thoughts, but it absolutely is actionable. It has action. It does. So did I kind of capture that well, everybody? So our question, your question, importantly, is, and this is where we were playing around with budget categories last time, is that if love and acceptance are sort of really operating core values, then what's the way in which that becomes actionable? And we were sort of playing with that idea for a good bit of time around the place of acceptance, right? We were talking a little bit about the implications of acceptance. So is that a good place to start? All right, why don't we start there again? Let's talk a little bit about acceptance. And so maybe to organize our thoughts, the question right now we want to answer is who? So before we get to even we're going to get to the what, yeah? We're going to get to the what. But let's talk a few minutes about the who. So who does the accepting? So we know that we've got God that does the accepting for sure. So God does the accepting.
The congregation.
Oh, no, congregation.
All right. So let's pause there.
I would add one more though.
All right.
And that's our space. So the space itself is acceptance.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about this. So when a core value is a core value, it is true because it is happening right now. It's not aspirational. So who does the accepting? You said the whole congregation. So let's test that. Who's the whole congregation right now? What I mean by that is, if of the whole congregation there are, and this is just fiction for a second, and think of the congregation as so it's an apple pie. And this bigger slice is the folks who worship regularly, give time, talent, and tithe, and say yes as they are able. So, I want to erase this for a second. So how much of the slice of your whole congregation is regularly at worship, gives tithe, talent, and time, and when you ask them, as long as they are reasonably able, physically able, they are yes. How big is the slice? A quarter of a circle. Is the slice a quarter of the circle? Is it bigger than a quarter of a circle?
I was actually thinking it was a third, but
That's a little bit.
I was thinking small.
Okay. Bigger and smaller.
Ah,
It's the old 80-20.
wow. Okay, so,
Well, I think it probably is a third, as long as, everybody that's in that third is doing at least part of what's listed there. I wouldn't say that everybody who is in that section fulfills all of those at the same time.
okay, I follow you.
Because we have those that worship regularly, we have those that give regularly, we have those that will say yes, and they're not necessarily the same people.
Okay,
Some of them are.
some of them are. So this is 1/4, of course, so maybe this is a little bit more generous and it's more like that. More like that. Okay,
In your experience, it seems to be vast.
what seems to be
Vast.
best?
Your experience seems to be vast.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
in your
in
experience.
my experience.
And the churches that you've been to,
Yeah.
do this, what was the main hindrance to church growth? People attending.
Not getting clear about core values. Not getting clear about core values.
The church's responsibility is to make those core values apparent.
The church's responsibility is to know their core values, to really name them. They're not aspirational, they're not nostalgic, they're true. And then in naming them, to boldly, obviously, live them. And that's attraction. Congregations that aren't clear about their core values are like the person who is learning to cook for the first time, but never seems to learn really. And so every recipe is an experiment, and the food is edible, but it's not. Sometimes it's tasty and sometimes it's bland. Sometimes it's not at all edible because it's not cooked through. Sometimes it's the repeat of the same food over and over and over again until everyone gets sick of it. That's a congregation without core values. They either get in a rut or they're trying everything under the moon in order to address what they think they need to address. A congregation, as you have worked in this way, a congregation who digs to their core values and boldly lives them, that becomes attractional. It's both going to attract folks to you, it will also create a mirror against which everyone else presses. And so, if acceptance is a core value, then that's a core value. So what I'm trying to say here to all of you is that when you say whole congregation, we need to even be clearer than that. And this is, without shame or guilt, we need to be able to say this is that acceptance is not really the whole congregation. It's really, and then you kind of name who that is. So it's 1/3 of the congregation, and it's these folks. That's who does this. Because
You're saying the goal is the whole congregation.
I'm saying that language is important, and that if you walk away saying acceptance is a core value, and it's the whole congregation, then what you're actually setting yourself up for is frustration, because it's not the whole congregation. It's some of. And by pressing you here is we're not suggesting that we don't hope that those that are not, we hope, right? We continue to hope that they will join. But you do not move forward as if it's the whole. You say, acceptance is true, and it's true for this core group. And I would argue it's that core group which is your congregation. And I'm using that now in the term of functional, not in any legal way. I'm not talking about baptized members. I'm not talking about who is on the rolls. I'm talking about who shows up. Because a core value is only relevant for those who show up. It's not relevant for anyone else. When others do show up, it could be relevant for them, right? It could be. But we don't want to say to everybody, this is your core value, because if they're not showing up, how do you know? Right? How do you know?
And we actually know that some that aren't showing up is exactly because it's not their core value.
And it's not their core value. And that's important too.
And that's something we discovered with COVID. It is specifically around acceptance.
So this is more accurately, at least for this part of the conversation right now, this is more like, so 1/4 to 1/3. And my encouragement is celebrate that rather than feel frustrated about that. Celebrate it. And since you are part of that 1/4 to 1/3, then do acceptance with wild abandon.
Expand on what the people that are core values are.
Yeah, these are the core values.
How that is attractive enough to get people in seats.
I don't know if it'll get people in seats. I don't know. That's not one of your core values.
It's not.
To get people in seats? No. These are your core values. This is this congregation's core values, what you see right here.
Love and acceptance.
Love and acceptance.
And what brings us to that and what sends us out from that. So if people end up in seats, that's wonderful. But that's not the intent of it.
Expand on that.
The intent is to become vibrant and effective as who we are. And the common result of that is church growth. But it's not the goal of it. So if all you're trying to do is grow your church, you'll usually fail. If what you're trying to do is to become effective, know who you are, and work with that, live that, then church growth often happens.
So brother, here's I'm just going to suggest a little process. You've got you're thinking, and you've got a lot of kind of questions and curiosity, and you also have some sense of what this could or should mean. What I'm thinking, because we're here in the process, and you're here for the first time. What I'm thinking, and what I'm inviting you to, is to participate as a keen listener, and to kind of jump in alongside in this particular part of the journey that we're on, and mark every question that you have, so that you can ask Pastor and others about that. Otherwise, this time for everyone will be spent, in some sense, looking back and grappling with questions that they've already wrestled with. And so you need to, so that's my invitation, is to just kind of recognize that this boat is here, it's not here, and just kind of come alongside as you're able, and jot down on your notepad every question that comes to your mind, every curiosity, every pushback, every clarification you wish for, and then get with your brothers and sisters, and that's your conversation with them. Yeah. So take your notepad, and I want you to get concrete, really. So I want you to write down that 1/3. Write down the families, the names of the persons in the families. I don't want you to, we're not going to put them up here, but I want you to write them down, and I want you to be able to kind of compare your lists with each other, because we're talking about the folks that and you among them would say, yeah, this core value is true, for this is true. This is the congregation that's true of. You can picture where they sit here in the sanctuary. You can picture where they sit out in fellowship hall and you're able to eat together. You can think about where they show up for service, helping, fellowship. Some of them are here year-round, some of them are not. Some of them are snowbirds. But when they're here, they're all in. You notice this about them. And then just tally that number of persons. We'll just get some numbers. Okay, what have you got for numbers? What do you think? 21. Great. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Yep. Yeah, sure. Sure. Okay. So that's both in person and virtual, right?
I don't know what's virtual. That would be more. That's probably why I got a couple more, because I included Liz and Bob. Anybody else on virtual?
There we have others that are on virtually, but I don't know who they are.
Hmm.
I think the Souths continue to attend. But I know we have more than just them attending online.
So unless they comment, we don't know who they are.
Right.
All right.
Comment on, if we're averaging 8 online a Sunday for the whole year, it makes sense that they're accepting of how we do things because they're choosing to come back every Sunday.
We're averaging about 8 views on a Sunday, which means about 12 people.
If they didn't like us, they wouldn't come back.
Okay. And as near as you can tell, they're the same cohort?
It would make sense to be.
Yeah.
The number is pretty
It's steady, that number.
It's pretty steady. Okay. So this might
It might be 30 or 32.
right. We might be really at 30 here. Okay?
But it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Except that they're there regularly every Sunday.
Yes. Yes. All right. So staying on the reason I asked you to jot names is because any community, that when you're sort of claiming and building something again, you need to keep each other in prayer. You need to know who each other are. So this is a way of saying it's not only this is not a closed circle by any means, but this is right now among those that we can say with some confidence that accepting is also their core value. And so you begin to pray for each other so that you can encourage each other around the doing of that, right? Around the being and the doing of that. It gets a little bit granular that way, but I think the outcome of that becomes something that is more life-giving, more joyful, more positive. It's about saying, so this glass is half full. We celebrate the who we are. So that's the inside who. Who's the outside who? If this is the inside, who's the outside that you think about with that core value? is the outside? There's more than one dimension, right? So this is still that vertical, this is that horizontal dimension. That horizontal dimension are those that say, oh, we count ourselves as this community of faith. Now, this community of faith also accepts those who are outside this community of faith. Who are they? Not perhaps named so much as kind of remembering categorically who are they? Who is in your world for whom you say you are welcome? You are God's child whether you know it or not. We want to be with you. We'd like you to be with us. Who is that group again? Maybe you need to jot it down first.
We have the groups that meet here, that we offer our space to.
Okay.
Which are AA and Girl Scouts and card players and meal makers.
Altruism.
And Altruism. Trying to think. Okay.
So that's,
Orange is in here, I don't know if they still do.
They are everywhere.
Okay, so 4-H.
mhm.
And then we have people who express a specific need come to us, and if at all possible, we help.
Okay. So these are groups that are using the building or are in the space. How about those that are not in the space, but for whom you would say,
Our homebound.
hmm?
Our homebound.
Homebound? Okay, so that's also here. They're inside, but that's important. Yeah. The homebound. They're inside the area, right, in that sense.
They're the groups that we try to help through. We have our Come Grow With Us project where we fund like the second chance and socks, food to spirit Christmas for kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one for us is
That's really ours. That's not an outside, that's really ours. I mean,
well,
people
it
can-
connects to outside.
Yeah, it
So
does
the-
connect to outside, but
Okay.
kind of both.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It is run from inside, but it connects to outside.
Yep, for sure. For sure. Mm-hmm.
Food pantry.
Food pantry.
Life Pregnancy Center.
And St. Vincent de Paul.
St. Vincent de Paul.
Mm-hmm.
A safe place for the school buses to pick up the children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, they were picking up on, just off the highway on the other side of the street, and we convinced them to use the parking lot instead. It's a much safer place for the kids to wait.
Great. What else?
We also offer, most of them don't really realize it, but while they're here, there's free Wi-Fi.
Yep.
And that's available to anybody who comes in. Okay, that's on 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there anything else? Who else?
Well, we try to work with the other churches in the area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ecumenical networking. Who else?
Also the diocese of the synod.
Sure, sure. Mhm. Now, in naming these who else's, is this list the list? Is there any other who's you're missing? As you think about who do you accept, who do you extend acceptance to, who else needs to be on this list? As far as you are concerned, it's who you extend acceptance to.
I think there are others that acceptance is extended to, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's being received.
That's right.
Things like part of putting together the system here for videoing is making it available to use in the area. Nobody's used it yet, but it's starting to get out there that it's available.
Okay. So that's Wi-Fi is available, but also video is available.
Our video production.
Video production. Yeah.
And that's specifically for you.
For you. Got it. Okay.
Not that we would say no to somebody else who wanted to use it, but
But that's the
hey,
that's the aim. That's the cohort. Right.
we also have the sign outside talking about safe space, which is specifically around people who need someplace to go where they know that they won't be judged or pushed away. Whatever it is they're trying to get safety from.
Okay. And that safety can be anything from being in an abusive household where they're beat by a caregiver, or they are thinking that they're a male in a female body, so a transgender wrestling, or they are gay. I mean, it could be those things as well.
Yes.
That safe space would just encompass any and all of that. Okay, whatever they're wrestling with. They're being bullied and don't know how to deal with being bullied. This would be a safe space. Okay, got it. All right. So let's draw another. Do we have I'm looking for
The eraser?
an eraser.
Right there.
Yeah, just didn't see it. It's hiding. All right. So here's another image for you, which perhaps will help us get at this a bit. So it's another circle, but this time it's 4 equal quadrants. And this is so the 4 quadrants are do for, do with, be for, be with. Those are the 4 quadrants. And there's a way that you can take all of those categorical relationships, those who's, and you can probably find them in one of those 4 quadrants. So doing for is just like it sounds. It's somebody says, we need space. And you say, oh, I've got space. And so you offer them space, and that's the doing for. The offering space is the doing for. And that's the extent of the relationship. That's what it is. You do for. You offer the space, you drive to a grocery store, what you do for. Or someone says, I need help with homework. So you become a mentor, let's say. So you are doing with. Or someone says, I don't know how to have a conversation with my parents about this thing. And so you might be for. You might go and speak to a school teacher or a parent. You follow me? What I want to highlight,
That's kind of an advocate.
this is like an advocate, right? Whether it's very personal like that or whether it's a little bit more global, like going to the town hall about changing a policy about something. So what I want you to note about these 3, however, is that the relationship is always uneven. By its very nature, it's uneven, meaning that you are in a position of more power than the other. It's really not about an equitable relationship. It's only in this 4th category, be with, that you're in an equitable relationship. And that equitable relationship is defined this way, that you know you're in an equitable relationship when your posture is that you are going to learn from them as much as they will learn from you. Your posture is that you will show them your heart. Another kind of picture image, you will show them your heart, and they will show you their heart. So you're both on the level. So go ahead and see if you can't drop those items in those 4 quadrants. Where do you think they are currently living? And they might be in more than one quadrant. But I want to, I'm sorry, just as one more clarification. If they're in this quadrant, then all of these other things are going to also be happening. If they are in the be with quadrant, then there might be times when you are doing for and doing with and being for. AA, Girl Scouts, card players, Altuza, I'm not sure I got like that right? 4-H, Second Chance, Socks, Food Pantry, Life Pregnancy Center, St. Vincent de Paul, Safe Place for school bus to pick up kids, free Wi-Fi, and also video. The video for youth, the Wi-Fi for anybody, ecumenical networking, diocese-synod relationship, safe space for anybody, but particularly for youth. All right, how'd you do? Did you drop them into places? So of that whole group of stuff, what falls in the be with column? What would you say falls in the be with?
Food pantry.
Food pantry
Socks.
and socks. Okay.
And diocese synod will fit there too.
Okay. So diocese synod, food.
Pantry, socks, socks.
Yep. Got it. Food pantry, socks. So I want to push back for a moment on socks and food pantry. So describe for me, in what way is that a be with? Because I told you that the relationship of a be with is that they learn as much about you as you learn about them.
You can add 4-H in it, because one of our church members leads that group. To the be with group.
Okay. So maybe 4-H also is a potential here.
But that reduces space.
Yeah.
I would say the food pantry because we're interacting with them and they're interacting with us.
All right, so let me test that right quick. So are you, anyone here actually in the food pantry, doing work in the food pantry? Two of you.
And sometimes five.
Okay, so tell me about the quality of relationship you have with the persons who come in and get food from the food pantry.
Well, we frequently see the same people.
Yeah, I'm asking you to tell me about the quality of the relationships.
In the relationship.
Yep. I want to know whether you know about their families,
Yeah.
whether they know about yours. Okay, then right away it's not a be with. It's not a be with.
The other workers,
The other workers,
we have, how many do we have with us? Six, every 2 weeks.
okay, and how about with the other workers? Do they know about you? Do you know about them?
Yes.
Okay, okay. All right, so again, I'm helping with that illustration, what goes and be with them. So we would have to nuance it. We would say the food pantry, but the be with part of the food pantry is with other workers. It isn't with clients. Correct. And that means it falls in the do for category, or it might be even in the do with category. But it's not in the be with. So the reason this is really important, everybody, is that it's only when we're in the be with category is that core value attractional. Otherwise, it's something that's important. It's a gift and time and talent that we offer that is an absolute benefit. But until it moves into that space where we are truly on the same level, where it's about building the relationship, that's only when a core value, that is what makes a core value in that sense. So acceptance as a core value is saying, is at times going to operate out of these other quadrants, the be for, the do for, and the do with. And they might be on-ramps if you can picture that, you know, they might be the first move or the first moves that begin to create space to be with. So I want to challenge you to figure out, and perhaps, again, do it quickly as you look at what you've written down, but of all of this stuff that you named that have to do with the who, what are the ones that are perhaps potential be with relationships? And it's those that you want to concentrate your time and effort on. I don't mean ignore the others, right? But I'm saying that's where you want to really dig, you know, spend your relationship currency. Really begin to enter into a new way of that with them. Because that will lead to, that's when you might have one of the wonderful unintended outcomes. And that unintended outcome is, I've never really thought about worshiping any place. But I know you, and you know me. And I know that I matter to you, that you value and honor me. And I value and honor you. So I can risk the question like, so what is it that you do at that church that you're part of? Really? And you can risk to say, you know, after all of this time, after all of these months, I know that you're going through some stuff. One time I was going through some stuff and I found real comfort and community in this place. Would you join me the next time I go? But that only lands on the depth and strength of the being with, of that relationship. But that's the gold about the core value acceptance. If you live only here, you will have great satisfaction that you are doing a lot of outreach. Not much of that will ever return to you in terms of persons or families really giving you any of their time or talent or money or faithful walk. Make sense? So what do you think? What's a candidate? You said socks, food pantry, and diocese synod were the three things that you initially circled. Are they the best candidates for being with? Maybe not. What's a good candidate for being with?
I see three of them that have potential for actually building relationships.
It would be, to me, it would be the video
Yeah. Video production for you.
production for the youth. If
All right?
we had youth that came in and used it, we could have a relationship with those youth.
And work with them rather than just providing the space.
Sure. Good. And what might be another one? If there's another one besides that?
Well, if someone came in and used the Wi-Fi in the media room,
Yeah.
then we could have a relationship with that person.
Yep. Okay. Anything else?
Safe space.
The safe space?
The three of those all work kind of the same way. In that if it's not enough that the space is provided and they come, we actually have to have people that interact with them when they're here. And there's one other that's kind of an odd one that could work the same way, and that's the school bus. We have a group of kids and parents that come sit outside of the church for 20 minutes every morning and every afternoon, twice, because they're the young ones and the older ones. So 4 times when something as simple as having somebody here with coffee for the parents could start relationships. So it move it out of the just doing for.
We're taking coffee.
You want to invite them all in?
Well, we've already mentioned, though I don't think any of the kids have taken us up on it, that if they're cold, they can come in.
Yeah.
Okay,
But I mean, they're out there at 6:30 in the morning.
yes, yes. Now you're beginning to, so we've just opened the door, haven't we, in a sense? We've opened the door. We're at the threshold. Wi-Fi, video, safe space, school bus. For a moment, let's claim those as the whats. Right? That's what you want to give your attention to around acceptance in a very intentional way.
The one of those that is already has people here that could be a kickoff for the other ones is the schools. Because if we could build a relationship with the kids and the parents' school bus, they would learn about the other things, and we would learn about what they need.
Okay? So how does you're hearing Pastor say something out loud? How does that land with you?
I don't know how you open the door, you say, come in and fix your job. I mean, nobody said be out here at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah, good. So this is the question about if any of these are the whats, then the how is the action. And it has to be, and here's the criteria for the how, in a sense. Again, this is just, so the criteria is that it's a small move, it is therefore repeatable, and that means it is a success. And when I say a small move, here's an example of a small move. So a person, let's say that a person, and maybe this is one of you at one point in your life, you've never flossed your teeth, ever. And you go to the dentist, and the dentist says, you've got to begin to floss your teeth, because if you don't begin tomorrow to floss your teeth, in 6 months, I'm going to be pulling teeth out of your head. And that puts such fear in you that you leave saying, okay, I'm going to floss. And so the next morning, or that night, you stand in front of the mirror and you begin to floss, and you're trying to floss every single tooth, and you, of course, are frustrated, and it hurts, and you fail, and you don't do it again. And you say to yourself, this is just too hard and stupid. I'm not doing it. So here's a small move. The small move is that instead of flossing that night, what you do is you pick up the floss, as you've been taught by the hygienist, and you snap the right amount, and you wrap it around your finger, but that's all you do. And the next morning at breakfast, before breakfast or after breakfast, you do the very same thing. That's all you do. And at night, you do the very same thing, and that's all you do. And the next morning, it's a little easier to snap it, to wrap it around your finger, and then you do one tooth. So that's what I mean by a small move. Until, of course, it's easy to do one tooth, so you do 2 or 3, or you do all the others. Right? And then, after a little while, you're flossing. Everything. Regularly. So, it's going to be a small move, it's going to be repeatable. So it's going to be like the timing has to be right. And it will lead to success. So the school bus is a possibility. So well, how's the how of it? What's a small move? And we're talking about not a relationship with this church. We're talking about a relationship with you. I mean, with whoever the you is that shows up, either in the morning or in the afternoon, and who just wanders over with your lawn chair when the weather's nice, and in the heavy coat and boots when the weather is cold, and you just hang there, and you say, "Hi, my name's Arlen. I wonder who you are. I'm here because I'm part of this community, and I just thought I would introduce myself." And everyone gives you sort of a cold shoulder, mostly. And that's okay. And you keep showing up. You keep showing up.
Do kids actually stand out here?
And some of them, I mean, particularly when it's warmer, a group of them will play basketball there.
So they just walk over here from their house?
Most of them are brought by car.
And drop off?
Well, no, the parents sit with them
Okay.
until the bus comes. There are a couple that walk in from Baylor, but most of them arrive by car, and the parents stay with them until the bus comes.
So that's a line trace bus?
Yeah.
I don't know how you get word to them. Would it be through the school, to the transportation department, to tell the bus driver, to tell these people, whatever we might do?
No, you just do it because they're here. But it has to be visible. So it can't just be there's somebody inside, or there's coffee available inside. It has to be where it's visible.
They're usually on their phones too, the parents.
Mhm.
That's true.
Yep.
They back in
Yep.
and immediately get on their phone.
Then they talk to each other all the time.
Probably.
Probably.
They're about 10 feet apart.
Yeah.
Talking to each other.
Okay.
Well, I've seen, I haven't seen any kids outside.
So I don't quite know like what the thing is, but you're beginning to talk about it. And I think it's crucial. This is about you making a move to initiate a relationship. And the arc of this is months, not days or weeks. The arc of this is months.
And it's not about saying, well, we're immediately going to have somebody there whenever the buses do the pick up or drop off. That's just not realistic. And the same thing is trying to immediately floss all of our teeth.
However,
It's 4 times a day, 7 days a week.
so I would say that whatever it is, though, and whoever it is, because if it's about a relationship, then it's not, oh, I'm representing the congregation. It's, I'm Arlen, and I'm here. I begin to show up Mondays and Thursdays in the afternoon, and I show up and I pass out candy bars. And the church buys those candy bars because that becomes part of the ministry of the church. No one knows that the church has done it. I don't say, these are from the church. I just say, hey, Anybody, I've got candy bars. Anybody feel like a candy bar? And you just pass them around. And somebody takes them and says, whoa, thanks, mister. And you say, hey, what's your name? My name's Arlen. Oh, my name's Isabel. Hi, Isabel. Yeah, I mean, this might seem sort of strange in a way, but it's how do you build a relationship with anybody? How do you build it with anybody? It's about being with them, they being with you. You taking a risk, they take a risk too, and it takes time. Yeah. But otherwise, how does acceptance function as a core value if that's not at the root of what acceptance is about? I wonder. Do you have a roadmap? I mean, we're not talking specifically necessarily about school bus. That's the example. However,
In our list, that appears to me to be the most accessible at the moment, because there's actually people there.
Yeah, because for the Wi-Fi and the video, we don't have any people
yeah.
yet involved.
So that raises a different
How do you
how.
get that
Right,
message out?
So that's a different, so you could play with that, couldn't you? You could say, so, we don't have anybody yet for Wi-Fi and video. So what would be some of the steps that we would take in order to get the word out, in order to create energy around that in the community, in order to blah, blah, blah? I don't know the answer to that.
I'm working on spreading that word with the school systems.
So there's one of the hows. The thing that just ran through my head was I was thinking about when I was a kid, and it's still true probably here in these neighborhoods. We had a local dairy. The owner of that dairy came around every day selling his ice cream in an ice cream truck. And so he just went down the road, ringing his bell, and he stopped at different places, and all of us kids, if we had permission that day, would find our way to him and get our ice cream, our hand-packed ice cream. So what just went through my head is, you all get a loudspeaker in a car and start driving through the neighborhoods saying, "Free Wi-Fi! Free Wi-Fi! Wi-Fi is free!" Yeah. And you've got between 21 and 30 folks who will, with you, continue to strategize about the how. Well, about clarifying the what, if those four things that are on the top are truly sort of reasonable whats. But the other folks in that group, those are your peeps. Those are the ones with whom you continue this conversation. And who knows? Expect that conversation will lead to tackling all of those or one of those, and beginning to move that forward as sort of a focused space for ministry and mission.
thinking back to what we were, sort of where we started about at the end of last time, we were talking about different categories in the budget and making decisions around them.
Yes.
So part of using this as the core of our decision making would be identifying these and not just as things that could happen, but possible focuses budgeting.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where that would fit, because none of those, and those are things we've already put in place that don't require additional budget at the moment. But
what else about this, this piece that we've been noodling around with? What else about this that you want to do?
I know, and one of the things that people have been talking about is, really on the sort of day-to-day stuff we do,
Mm-hmm.
how do we incorporate using the core values, because it's not something we're used to doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the, just the nuts and bolts of doing on a daily basis. Not so much in the big picture, but in the small things.
Mm. Mm. So what's an example, Warren, or what are you thinking?
Well, I mean, things like, how does it affect the way we hold a parish leadership team meeting?
Mm-hmm. As a for instance. Yeah. So that becomes, in your governance leadership, when you all meet as leaders, your agenda, the business of the day always leaps off of in what ways are we advancing. And then you name your core values. Acceptance, which is both in and out, right? Acceptance within the community, acceptance with those outside of the community, and then up and across, which is my quick way of saying acceptance in the sense of God, right? and acceptance in regards to others? In what way are we loving? In and out? Up and across? And if the conversation doesn't talk about those things, then it doesn't belong on the agenda. And if the conversation is not talking about what you are doing currently and what you intend to do tomorrow, then stop the conversation, because it doesn't matter about what you've already done. So your conversations are not ever looking back, except in the sense of what have we learned, not simply reporting. There's no need to report that 4 of you brought coffee out to the school bus over the last month. There's no need to report that. There is a need to say, however, so, what have we learned? How are our relationships growing and changing as a result of bringing coffee out? That's the conversation. Do you sense the simple shift? It's not about reporting what you've done. It's talking about in what way does it make a difference. And do you want to do so? Is that a how that you keep doing or not? And how do we continue to extend this? How do we continue to advance it? That's your agenda. Do we have financial resources in line to support advancing it and sustaining it? Are there more than 30 of us who are advancing and sustaining it? How do we have people resources, we have material resources. So we talk about how we are advancing our people and our material resources. That's very quick, but that's kind of the broad template for all of your leadership meetings. There's never a conversation that is, or if you've got a pie chart of a meeting, I would suggest that no meeting ever begins with accepting the minutes from the previous meeting. Never. Because when the previous meeting took place, those minutes were then shared with everybody at that meeting within 5 days or less. Are you already doing this? Everybody looks at those minutes. They make corrections if need be. They vote to accept them. And in those minutes are your punch items that are saying, oh, so Arlen said that he's committing to Tuesdays and Fridays with coffee. It's in the minutes, right? Arlen said I would do that. So now that the minutes have been accepted and approved within 1 to 5 days after the meeting, now 2 things happen. Everybody who participated in that meeting knows and has a record of what I committed to and what everybody else did. So it's a reminder to help me, and it's my way of also praying for all of you who are doing your part. Those same minutes go out to everybody else who's on a board and committee, or I would say more generally, it goes out to the 30. So the 30 also have all of that information, so that they know what's going on and can be in prayer about it. When you come to your meeting next time, you don't approve the minutes. They've been approved. What you do is you say, so, what do we have to tackle today? How's it going? I keep running out of coffee. That's a good thing. Or, I keep dumping a whole pot of coffee every week. Not a person is drinking coffee. Maybe tea instead. Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. So it's all about evaluating and advancing, evaluating and advancing. Is it too crazy to move your cheese enough to approve your minutes within a few days of your meetings? And then to disseminate them to everybody once they're approved?
No, that's not crazy. Maybe we should get hung up somewhere. You know, the secretary is slow to get them to meet.
But that's only because that process isn't in place.
Right, if we change our process, that would work.
I would say a simple move like that is one of the keys to paying attention to these, to working with core values, rather than spending, even if it's only 15 minutes, but whatever amount of time it is for everybody to look at them and to talk about it. Committees do not report in either. There's no time about what committees have been doing. Because committees, if you've got other committees besides your one board that meets, or working groups, they are already communicating to everybody what they've done. So you've got a record of that ahead of the meeting. So there's nothing that's going on that you all don't know as leaders when you sit down. Nobody says, well, let me tell you about, yeah, we had a meeting and Arlen showed up and pastor showed up and, you know, a couple of people were away and, you know, we accepted our minutes and so in that pie chart of time, you're spending half of your time talking about what's already been done and visiting. So begin by visiting. Do the relationship piece, right? Be with one another. Really be with one another. Share your hearts. That's how you begin. And then say, so, how do we help each other keep advancing this? And the same thing in your working groups, in whatever other teams you have. Their work is to say, so, finance, like the finance team, how are we advancing acceptance and love?
Take a mental shift. Just in it's, you know, one of the things that typically happens in churches, and this church is no different than any other I've been at, is that leadership group tends to end up acting kind of like a business board. But we're not and we have aspects of a business, but that's not what we are. And we do, start our meetings with a Bible study, which the way it's done very much fits into, pushes towards trying to learn not just about what the Bible is saying, but how it speaks into each of our lives, which does bring up some pretty individual things sometimes, as people become more and more comfortable doing it. But, and the discussion around that often leads to, and Don knows about this because in the adult study, it often goes in a very similar way that it diverges greatly from where we started. And becomes very personal. Sometimes.
So your meeting, all of your meetings, every single time, need to begin by doing your core values. You need to figure out a way that every time you're together in a meeting, the first thing that you're doing is spending time with love and acceptance. And that part of that is receiving God's love and acceptance. So there's a worship element, let's say, and a prayer element. But it also has to stay horizontal. Don't just have a prayer and that's it. Or even Bible study in the sense of, well, what's God saying? You need to do the love and acceptance this way. You need to connect with each other at as deep and most vulnerable and honest a way as you know how.
When we do the studies, the questions that are asked for each reading we do, which is the daily reading, are the first one is what words, phrases, or ideas stood out for you.
Yes.
The second is what is it saying to you right now in your life?
Yes.
And the third is what is it calling you or us to do right now today? And it would be pretty easy to adjust those a little bit too.
Those are a great on-ramp to this I think those are a great on-ramp to that. Yeah. I mean, what you're beginning to think about or feel a little bit anxious about is that the core values, again, only matter because you're practicing them. And you don't practice them over here, but not over here. So they become part of every piece of the life of the church, and your part in it. Every bit of it. Every bit of it. Yeah. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time, right? I mean, all of that can. I mean, if you're used to keeping things moving, it's 15 minutes or something. If you want to give it more time, you give it more time. But never neglect it. And help everyone to feel confident in other leadership roles when pastor is not there to do it. Because it needs to happen in every meeting. It has to happen when the trustees meet. And when the finance folks meet. When they're all only accustomed to looking at budgets and building. And the last thing on their mind is a Bible study or a Lectio Divina, which is what you're describing more. Yeah. So you all sort of lead this out, in a sense. You're the ones who lead this out. Because the question that trustees need to ask is, in what way does this building advance love and acceptance? When you look at this space, in what way does this space, this worship space, advance that? And you can say, it's advancing it in these certain ways. And then you can also say, perhaps, and maybe it's not advancing it in these certain ways. And what would we need to begin to put into place over time so that it does? Right? So that it does. And now we're talking about a little bit like a long-range plan around very pragmatic things, perhaps. So, when we do fellowship and have meals, how does that model acceptance and love? And you need to have in your mind's eye acceptance around the who. So how is that, how you do, like how you do fellowship, for instance, even though it seems to almost always have to do with the insiders. I keep using the wrong color. Even though it's almost always all saints people, you'll need to start exercising that energy that says, oh, so fellowship is also for accepting a safe space, a person who is finding safe space here. Or a mom or a dad and their kid on the school bus. or somebody who comes in and does youth video or free Wi-Fi. So how do we do fellowship in such a way that begins to model and practice what that looks and feels like, in a sense, when the person who is in our midst is not the person who we always see and know. So we have a bunch of habits that are automatic, that you do without even, they're reflexive. You do without even thinking. Everything from where you sit to when you begin to eat and who's in charge of food and what the rules are. You hardly even speak many of that stuff out loud. But acceptance and love as a core value means that you make plain your internal way so that the stranger doesn't feel estranged. Again, tell me whether that is landing anywhere. Does that make sense?
I think it does to me because it seems like when we do fellowship, people always end up in the same place with the same people. So, I think it would have to be an intentional thing that we do every time we meet rather than just once in a while.
And I'm suggesting here that it's that you should sit where you always sit, right? But what you should also do is, with intention, make a little move, like next to where everybody always sits. Always leave one space open. And you can all begin to say, well, that's where Elijah is sitting. Right? That's where Jesus is sitting. Which becomes perhaps a small way of saying to yourself, so when the stranger, when the new person is here, I will feel comfortable at guiding them over to that space, to that Elijah seat, right? I'll be okay with them in my little social group. And of course they will be, because you will have already established a relationship with them. They won't be showing up necessarily without you knowing them and they knowing you. But you have to model that now, even when it feels like a game, where it doesn't seem to be any need for it. If you don't open the space, which is really emotional and spiritual, then you won't open it really. And that stranger will look around and say, yeah, these folks seem nice, but I don't know that I belong. I'm not even sure where to sit. And I'm not sure what the food is, and I don't know what the rules are. You've got to make that obvious. I'm moving around because it's chilly. The heat has gone off again. Yeah. So what's next? How will you begin to communicate to the other 20 or 25, or how many there are? There's 6 or 7 of you, then there's another 15 or 20. What do you need to do to bring those folks into the circle? Up to speed about this. What do you need to do? What do you think?
When we go back and have a coffee hour, that'll be an opportunity, an opportunity
Good, right?
Or in a small group. I mean, like, for Sue and I, it might just be talking to the other members of Altar Guild that aren't here. And, you know, just that, you know, just having a discussion.
Sure, sure. Why not? Sweet.
And also incorporating it into what we do for our annual meeting next week.
Ooh, that might be a little quick. We could try it.
At least talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm talking about how things, what changes they might see.
You guys discuss it on Sunday.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
bring it up as often as possible.
Sure. Sure.
Also now that, and there's, this, I have one other thought about a potential way of changing it. And I want to know what people think. This time, it's cleaned up a lot from what it used to be, and I enlarged the letters or the acceptance, which you really couldn't see in the previous ones, because they were so tiny. I was thinking of potentially taking those off of the LOVE letters and instead putting them around the inside and the outside of the circle. Which would make it a little bit, I don't know, it's just a possibility.
To me, limiting the number of times that it's there might make it more clear.
Yeah, I was thinking of maybe having it go around here instead of being around each of these letters.
Yes, but not necessarily run into one another constantly.
Yeah, you need some space between each time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we have a final version of this, I would like to get it printed quite large and put it up on the wall. So that it is central and visible and a talking point.
Mm-hmm.
Could we turn it into a yard sign?
Yes,
Posters
because
One
they,
of those plastic poster board things that,
yeah, and we have the frames to put it out in the yard. And we can do a yard sign and we can put it out in here so that it's a talking point for us and it's a visible thing in anybody that drives by.
And I wonder if, you know, on all of your communications and the bulletin as a weekly communication, you have two logos. So you have this logo, and then you have this logo, and this is All Saints logo. This is yours. This is your particular badge. This is your quick way of remembering what your core values are and the being and doing of it. So you have your identity as church, part of a Episcopal Lutheran world, but you have your specific identity, and it's this. I'd say that needs to show up on every bulletin, every newsletter, on your website. Business cards get embossed with it, and I would create cards for so that every one of you, every one of you, 25 to 30, have those cards that you can give away, wherever your world happens to be. if you're making action steps for the next thing, what are your action steps for the next thing? Very pragmatically, you're going to, besides sort of announcing and talking a little bit with everybody on Sunday and at the annual meeting of the church, and then beginning to talk to the different groups that you're a part of, Altar Guild and the council and so forth. What are other practical steps?
Incorporating into our meeting orders, and decision making.
Okay, so meeting orders,
Or
meeting style.
and decision making.
Okay, what else?
Thinking, liturgically, we've tried to make sure that every Sunday has at least one hymn that speaks in love and acceptance.
So we need to update the website
Okay? Yeah.
and the Facebook page to include love and acceptance.
Okay?
I actually already updated the Facebook page. At least in the description of who we are, it no longer just says All Saints Church, it says at All Saints you are, we feel loved and accepted, and at All Saints Church you will be loved and accepted. I'm not sure exactly how I worded it, but it was based on what we did last time.
Mhm.
I
Okay?
thought that was just a posting. I thought you just posted that.
No, this morning I changed it in the description
Oh, I see.
in our profile.
What other concrete steps?
Yard sign. Posters. Flyers.
Bulletin.
Bulletin.
And choosing something to do to build relationship in our group up at that top right. Whatever it is, thinking something to try to build relationships.
Yep. It may be that not everybody chooses the same one, even, because it's not specifically about these four, although these are ministries. It is about, of that, again, that kind of 21 to 30 folks, all, stepping forward with a different intention around a ministry that you've named, which could be any of these as well. Including homebound. And doing those core values. Yeah, being So what's your timetable on beginning to more fully embed this in the community? Gonna now until summertime, now until Easter, now until next year, now until next week? How long will it take to embed it, do you think?
Some steps are quicker than others.
Yep.
Things like changing the style of our meetings could be, we'll have a new PLT starting after our annual meeting. It could be the first meeting of that new PLT.
Yep. Sure.
Working on it'll be a bit before we can have new cards and all of that stuff printed, because it still has to be finished designing. But that's not a huge amount of time. The one that'll take the longer, I think, is getting something set up to actually start building the relationships. Getting people willing to do that.
What do you think? Is that true? That'll be the work? Yeah. So that's where you need to spend your time truly. You know, doing stuff like the website and yard signs and all of that, and those are manageable and, you know, and maybe fast. And even something like changing the style of the meeting might just seem to most folks as, okay, that's a little bit practical that we do minutes, you know, up front rather than wait a month and blah, blah, blah. But the being with peace needs to be fully embedded internally if you're going to be able to really do anything with it out externally, in a sense. It's got to be embedded inside first. And that means inside each of your hearts. And that's true for those of you that have been in these conversations. It's not so necessarily a given for others. Although you believe that 21 to 30 are, yes, you know, are on board. But they need time to embed this inside of their heart too. So you need to give yourselves time to practice. Maybe this becomes your now through Lent to Easter becomes your focus. Your focus is really about embedding the emotional part of this inside of you collectively, individually. You find ways throughout all of Lent to do the being with peace with each other around the core values. And just keep having those conversations and engaging in fun ways and in good ways, so that Easter becomes your launch for the thing that you have chosen, or the things that each person on their own has chosen. That you're using that arc of weeks to both embed it in your system and for everyone to sort of say, oh yeah, so this is what God is calling me to be and to do. I can do this thing with the school buses. I wake up at 5 every morning. I mean, I'm awake and out the door. I'm getting coffee at Tim Hortons at 5:30 every morning. Not a big deal for me to come over here and meet and just begin to hang around at 6:30. Easy peasy. I need a budget so I can brew coffee, and I need to-go cups so I can bring it out to folks. There might be someone in your community that is all in on that. But whatever it happens to be, that's just, if I were thinking about a fairly near-term arc of time, gives you 12 weeks or so if you begin now. by mid-April, you'll begin to say, oh, it's Easter, and we're ready to launch something. You know, we're ready to give our attention to building relationships. Not that you're not already, but that becomes, that you get to say the A word again, and you get to do something about it. Does Easter seem reasonable? Does 12 weeks from now or so seem reasonable to do enough time for all 25 of you to feel like you're all in and what it means, and begin to put some bones on the hows, right? Begin to put some details to you know what you want to try, it's how you're going to do it that becomes the work.
And what it's all about, not just, doing something because we need to be doing something, but doing something because it ties into who we are.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So between now and Easter, you get to talk a lot about those two things. The why, the purpose, and the who. And right now it's God and us. That's what you do now through Easter. You talk to each other about the why, which you have in hand, about the who, because this is what God is calling you to be and to do, and we're the ones that are God's hands and feet and presence in the world. You can offer free iron-on tattoos, removable tattoos of the new core value logo.
That would be interesting. I'm not sure. Got to tweak the design so that it works well in a small, so you can see what it is when it's really small.
Yeah. Well, those broad-back members of your congregation, they'll just the entire
Temporary tattoos this size.
That's right across your back. Summertime.
Who wants it to be not temporary? Yeah, that's the subject.
Yeah. So what else are we doing today? Have we done it?
Anybody have any other questions for Arlen that he might be able to help us with here? I'm personally so thankful for your working with us to get to this point. We've talked about a lot of stuff and sort of gone through a journey that I don't think any of us would have really seen how the journey would work for any particular stage of it. I know that a lot of people, when we started the journey, were like, well, why are we doing this? Where is it leading? And couldn't really see a path. But it definitely led somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. So don't lose courage. You have with you who you have with you. And others will either join meaning those that are already inside the All Saints community, or they will simply move on. And you can bless them on their way, for those for whom that is true. And for everyone else, you get to say, this is what God's calling us to be and to do. This is who we are. And we're going to chase it with all of the energy and love and acceptance we know how. And we're not apologizing. We put on the mantle. And we're going to do our very best with God's help. That's a beautiful thing. And as you move forward with this, if you get to a different point where there's a little other kind of work that you'd like some coaching with or some support with, you know where I am. Just reach back out. Was anybody online during our conversation?
No.
Okay.
But it's recorded.
But it's recorded.
Not that the only one who would primarily be heard is you, because we were passing around the mic.
Yeah.
But thank you, everybody, for being here today. And may God bless us all moving forward. And help us to enter into that space of being with, of sharing love and acceptance with each other and with everyone around us. And if anybody has any feedback on that image, let me know.